Welcome to another episode of Always Ageless, where we believe that growing older is not about decline, but it's about living fully with purpose, dignity, and definitely with joy. Today's guest is someone whose work has impacted thousands of families who are navigating, like we are, one of life's most emotional and challenging seasons. Amy Cameron O'Rourke is a nationally respected advocate, author, and care manager who brings not only decades of professional experience, but also an incredible depth of heart. When I first started the show, I hoped that someday she would be my guest. And so this is really a special day for me as well. And I'm so happy to bring her to you, my listeners and my viewers. Her book, The Fragile Years, Proven Strategies for the Care of Aging Loved Ones, is a guide that I believe every family should have on hand. We all need one. In it, she combines wisdom, clarity, and grace to help families like ours make thoughtful, loving decisions in the face of uncertainty. And goodness knows there's plenty of that. So whether you're an older adult yourself or the adult child of someone aging, or like some of us, you're both of those things, today's conversation will open your heart and give you tools that you can actually use. So let's begin. Amy Cameron O'Rourke, welcome sincerely to Always Ageless.
Valerie, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. There's so much that we can talk about today, and we cheated a little bit ahead of time and talked a little bit already. But let's talk about what is the fragile years? What does that term really mean?
What it really means is the fragile years is a stage. It's a stage like being pregnant, terrible twos, menopause, midlife crisis is a stage. It's a recognizable stage, but it's an unknown stage. And it's for older adults, usually, and keep in mind, I talk in the bell curve, acknowledging that there are 90-year-olds and 105-year-olds out there that are breaking the bell curve. But for the most part, in your 80s, there's 3 to 5 years of what I call fragility. And you can see it if you know what to look for. And so what I like people to do is just observe. If you have a family member or a friend or somebody in your world, just observe. And there might be an event, there might be like a car wreck or a hospital stay or something, but there might not be. There might just be what I call the slowing down period. And you can think about what a person normally does. Like my mother-in-law plays bridge 3 times a week. Now, if she goes to playing bridge 1 time a week, now she's 90, yeah. I'm gonna log that. Not that I'm gonna do anything, but I'm gonna log that. She stopped driving at night. Okay, that's not a big deal. But if she starts not going to water aerobics.
Oh, that would be a big thing.
Yeah, that would be. So in your world with your person or persons, you're looking at, are they slowing down? Pace of walk, pace of eating, pace of drinking. And for those years, I like to say less is more. Like, there's incidences, and I've had this happen where, the adult daughter comes in and dad's fallen and broken his hip. That's his event, and he's in the fragile years. And she's fixated on getting him back home and back to normal. And what I like to explain to people is that you don't want to be disconnected from the stage that they're in. Meaning, dad's broken a hip. He's going to get better, perhaps not. But he's not going to be where he was before, more than likely. And keep in mind, there are people that break, but more than likely, he's not going to return. So there's a pressure you can take off yourself if you're taking care of someone to stop pressuring yourself to get them back to the way they were, help them, support them, and see where they land. And be with them in that new stage and see how they go from there.
Their new reality, so to speak.
The new reality. Yeah. You kind of got to reset. And in this stage, and Valerie, this is why I wrote the book. This is literally why I wrote the book. I had family member after family member come in front of me, and they're shocked, surprised, blindsided they're looking at me like, I cannot believe this is happening to my mother. And I heard that over and over. And I had a lawyer friend of mine, and she said, you got to write a book. You got to put this on paper because people are coming in, they're shocked and you're not. And that was my reality. I thought, how do you not know this? And so I wrote the book to help people understand, we're talking more and more about menopause, which I think is fantastic. The more we talk about it, the more we're ready for it. It's the same with the fragile years.
So I think that we talk about this. Some of our colleagues in our morning call talk about this, that we don't know what we don't know. And I've said this so often and talk about it so much that, especially for those of us who are the adult children of aging parents, which we can talk about again and talk about for hours, but we don't know what to expect. We don't know how long they're going to live. Like, we don't know that this is their new reality. And people will say often, well, and have said, once they go to the hospital for something, then that changes everything. Well, did that change it, or was it going to change anyway, or did it already change? And that just one thing proved that they were in that new stage.
Right, right. And what I would say to you is the way you express that, Valerie, like talking about what you don't know, the biggest thing that stops people from doing well in the stage is ego, a lack of humility.
Really?
Yeah, like people used to ask me when I ran this company, care management company, they would say, "Who's your competitor?" And I said, "It's the family member that thinks they know what they're doing." You know what I
Um,
mean? Like, they think they know what they're doing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they don't kinda let down their guard, open themselves up, and ask questions to say, "What do I need to know here?" What I'm seeing on my end, you say hospital stay, I see Medicare, Medicare Advantage, pharmacy changes, going to the rehab, going to hospital rehab, all those healthcare systems and financial systems that a family member has to understand to make good decisions for their family member fast. 'Cause everybody in the healthcare system is pushing hard and fast, and, I like to help people slow that decision making down so that they can make a thoughtful, prepared decision for their family member.
I think, and I've talked with our friend Catherine about this. We talk about doing community workshops and information and knowledge and education for the aging adult, for the older people my, I don't know about yours. And yet I almost think that there should be the same amount of education focused on the people who are the adult child of the aging parent.
100%. When I
Because
when I
we
talk
should have classes for them.
Exactly, exactly, because there's 2 different audiences. When I went to a retirement center, the guy that led the workshop was on the fragile years, he's 92, minister, lovely man, I loved this man. We had almost 100 people attend the event, they were all older adults, none of the family members, and I didn't know that they would be as interested as they were. They bought a ton of my books, and they gave it to their family members.
Right, yeah.
And so it was again a reminder that, it's education for the older adult. How do I tell my children what I want? How do I do that? And when I can't talk for myself, what should I do to let them know it's okay for me not to have that surgery, for example? It really
Right.
is 2 separate audiences.
It is. It is. So our friend Catherine says, yes, but will they come to those educational events? They may not come to the first one, but I think eventually if I knew I was going to be in a room of us and we all have the same question, I would want to know that. You met a lady, and maybe in Florida, who made the movie Wine, Women, and Dementia, and which we're going to bring to Orange County to a private theater here and show it at the 1st of November. And her her movie is about the children and what they went through. She didn't interview the parents, she interviewed the children and what were we going through and the questions that they had. And the fragile years should be a manual for, it is, but should be looked at as a manual for us as well as for our aging parents.
That's right. That's right. And the thing for me, I had a daughter working with her mother. Her mother's 94, and I was at the house, and she was one of those 94-year-old that had the Coke bottle glasses and the really curly kind of blue hair and cute. She was so cute. She was so cute. Well, she's sitting on the couch with me, and the daughter's running around like, a frantic daughter does. Um, and the mother looks at me and she says, "I'm ready to go." And I said, "Does your daughter know?" And she says, "I'm trying to tell her. I try to tell her." And so I asked the daughter to come over, and she sat down, and all that tightness and stress and control and anxiety, I asked her to just listen to her mother, that her mother had some things to say. And the daughter was able to hear where the mother was. So all the decisions for the next 3 years were easy because she had that conversation with her mother about, let me be where I am. Just
Mhm.
let me be where I am. And there's some meaning if you can get past the grief and the denial. And listen, there's nothing more heartbreaking than watching your parent, decline. I mean, there's a lot of things more painful than that, but it's really painful. Very sad. I turned my head many, many times taking care of my dad and my mother. I had to turn away to just cry so they couldn't see. Um, and that there's grief.
Yeah.
And people don't really bring that to the forefront because they think they haven't died. So they're not
Right.
in grief.
And then sometimes you learn things afterwards. When my dad, we took my dad to a board and care home because he was kicked out of the hospital, and then he was kicked out of the other home, skilled nursing. Not kicked out, but because it was his time was up there, we had to put him in a board and care. And I took him there, and I remember when I wheeled him in, and he said, "Is this a house?" And I thought he's getting really old. Well, he's 99. But after he passed away, then we realized he couldn't see, and we didn't know it. And so many things, there's so many things about discovery, that we need to watch out for. So you've talked about, let's get back to the book. We've talked and you. We've talked about some things that when your loved one slows down, are there any other things that identify the fragile years? You say it's when they're about 80. Is that because there's something happens to the body about that time?
Well, it's in your 80s. So it might be 81,
Right.
it might be
I'm
85, somewhere in your 80s. I think our life expectancy kind of drives that. Our life expectancy, there's a lot more women that are retired than men. We outlive the guys. So when we're talking about, people in their fragile years, there's a lot more women than men. And what indicates that is the slowing down, and then the need for help and the resistance to help. So, and it's always there, and it's normal to be there. And there's the common conversation is, my mother, my aunt, my grandmother won't take the help.
okay. Yeah.
And from the family member, they want 8 hours a day right from the get go, or they want to move them to assisted living right from the get go. But needing help should really start in the fragile years with something very, very small, almost meaningless. And you'll know what that would be by observing the person that you're concerned about and seeing where they might accept help and asking them, is picking up your mail, is that something you'd want me to do? You know, do you see a need at all for me to have a housekeeper come in every other month? Like just open-ended questions. And if they say no, that's the answer. You're not going to have a one and done. You're not going to have one conversation and they're going to take the help right away because from the older person's perspective, once I accept help, it's the beginning of the end.
Right. So that's my question to you we teach our kids, if someone says no, they mean no. But when your mom says 90 and she says no, does she mean no? Or she mean, right, does she mean no, I can handle it, but I really wouldn't mind if I had some help? How do you follow that?
What I like to help people do is ask really open-ended questions and spend time connecting emotionally, because what might work for my mother is not going to work for your mother. So you have to be
Yes.
really emotionally open and in tune with yourself, one, and you're asking yourself, do I have an outcome in mind? Do I want to relieve my stress? Am I preparing? If they get help, then I'm going to feel better. Like, what are your motives? And get clear that you're only wanting to offer help. And then you have a person that's really clear. They say no, they mean no. Then you have the older adult that's a little muddled, maybe a little impaired judgment. And then, I say try a few things. Maybe you put down a meatloaf and broccoli dinner. Maybe you go over and you eat with them once a week. Maybe you empty out the garbage while you're there. So you're going to just experiment with different ways to be involved without doing a frontal attack with you need 4 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay. All right. And then, and I'm kind of wandering around, but I think these are important issues. And what do you do if you're not there? I'm in California, and this isn't the case, and my mom lives in Minnesota. Um, what about those kids? What about those loved ones? And we just don't know how to handle this. Do we put cameras in their home? I mean, how can we care for our loved ones when we're not there?
So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the concept of role reversal. And one thing I would recommend you not do is start talking to your parent or your family member that's long distance as if they're a child and they need to do what you recommend doing. That will be a failure. And people do it because they don't know how else to act.
Right.
So, really, what you're trying to establish with a long distance person is collaboration, working together, and then involving them in where you are and what's reality is. What do I do in case of an emergency? Who do I call? Who are your friends? Have you been visiting? And if you've not been visiting, you need to be visiting. There's a book out there. It's called My Mother, Your Mother. It was written in '08 by Dr. Dennis McCullough, and he talks about the 72-hour visit and making sure. And I know I'm people that are listening are like, my dad and I never got along. I'm not flying to Ohio to see him. So, but ideally you would visit without having an outcome in mind. Because if you only fly in when you're needed, they think you're coming in because it's the beginning of the end.
Right.
Oh, they think I'm going to die. And then they shut down. So if you kind of planned all along, you're visiting, you're calling, and then you're meeting people that they know. You can hire a care manager. You can go on the website, aginglifecare.org. For some people, they can't afford it. If you can, that's a great way to have a boots on the ground, if you will, in the city that your family member lives in. But you want to start establishing a communication that says, how if you become unable to speak for yourself, how do you want me to handle you and your affairs? What best way, like include them in that conversation, give me your idea, give me your vision, give me your best case scenario so I can know you deeply in regards to your health care and not make as many mistakes as I might make under stress. So
Amy,
you're
I read something in your book. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I read something in your book, a case where someone took care of their mom or their mother-in-law, and they weren't that close to them, but you thought that it was really gracious how they handled it because it was the right thing to do, and they cared for their loved one even though they didn't have a close relationship. And I think of this, that maybe you can just go to them. Would you say, look, I just want to know how to help you if there is an emergency, if there's an event or some time comes. I just want you to know that I care enough about you that I'm here for you. And I thought that was a great story. Um,
It is because, I meet people that say, my parents and I, we didn't have a good relationship. They weren't that great to me. And I've had family members say that to me, and it helps so much to clear the air so that I have expectations that are in reality. And I think those are the unsung heroes.
yeah.
Like, wow, you go to bat for your parent when they weren't there for you, but that takes a lot of depth emotionally.
It does. It does. But they're your family, and family is family, and that's a whole nother story. Whole nother story, I'm sure. So you tell us, let's take a minute to talk about what is a care manager. I think because a lot of people don't know. And I think that's a relatively new position, is it not?
The
I mean,
aging life Yeah, the Aging Life Care Manager, aginglifecare.org. The profession is 40 years old. People don't know about it because people don't know what they don't know. They don't know that there's a profession out there that helps people. And I like to have people think about this time of life. You need three-legged stool is healthcare, care manager, the lawyer, and the finances. And those three things have to be worked through in order to accommodate the goals and the needs of the older person. So a care manager, a certified care manager, and you go on the website and see them. You want to make sure they're certified and they'll have a CMC or a CCM
okay.
after their name. They will have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and they will be certified, which means that they have had supervision, either 2 years for a bachelor's, 1 year for a master's, and they've taken a certification exam, which means that they know what you want them to know to help your family member. And in addition to that, in their profile, they will list the things that they're good at. You can have an RN who's a care manager. You can have a social worker that's a care manager. Well, if my mother, and she was medically complex, I wanted a nurse care manager.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right.
And if I was just trying to find a place for my mother to live, maybe I'm looking at the aging life care community. Maybe I want my mother's long-term care insurance looked at. Well, a social worker, they can do that. A nurse can do it also. But look at what they say they're good at and call and get an idea of how they work.
And so a care manager is someone who they would handle everything. They would kind of be your estate manager, so to speak. Is that a kind of a good term?
It's close, Valerie, and the way you're grappling with is very, very normal because really the way it works is the care manager meets the person and then they will outline ways that they can help. And what I like to do is work with the family members on what they wanted me to do and what they were going to do. We work on a budget. So let's say
Right.
mom was at home and we needed home care and the family didn't think that she was getting a good diagnosis. So going to the doctor, interfacing with the doctor, making sure that all the specialists were talking to each other, make sure that the medication was known by all. And then if they went to the hospital, we would agree, do you want me to go to the hospital? Do you want me to run interference at the hospital? Do you want to go and use me as your coach on the side? Do you want me to supervise the care? Do you want me to find equipment to make it easier for your mother to get a bath? Do you want me to train the aides in dementia if there's a memory impairment and your mom's acting a little weird? So you tailor make the plan based on the budget and based on your need. If you're working full time and you can handle the nights, maybe it's the daytime that you need the help in going to all these appointments.
Let me ask you a question. Of the people who hire you, how many of them are local to their loved ones versus far away from their loved ones?
I'm going to say 50%.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
People
people hire
think
you even though they're close by?
even though they're close by because they're working full time or they're taking care of their own children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or all of those things.
Yeah.
Sure. One of the things I have felt was really important isn't just a plain old advocate. And I think it first came to mind, and I read it in your book, is in the medical situation, an advocate at the hospital, an advocate with their medication, an advocate if you put them in assisted living or even in a boarding care home. I wish I'd had an advocate for my dad because somebody said, okay, we're going to do this. I didn't know if that was okay or not. Somebody called me from the hospital and said, we're discharging him this afternoon. I said, what am I going to do with him? I wish I'd had an advocate.
Valerie, your honesty is so refreshing. And that's the most satisfying part of the job. of a care manager, advocate, whatever you want to call us, is mm, when you're in the hospital, there's techniques that you can use to keep them in the hospital, and there's techniques that you can use to get them out of the hospital. There's techniques to slow down a discharge. There's techniques that, will help you land in the right rehab facility. There's techniques to prevent a crisis. There's language that can be used, with the hospital. They're wanting, get them out, get them out, get them out, which happens all the time.
Yeah,
And
I'm
if
sure.
if you said something like, I wanna have a discharge that results in him not returning, because hospitals get penalized if you return within 30 days. And the
Okay.
conversation becomes, we're working together to prevent a return. And we've also got, if you appeal the discharge, you've bought 72 hours to figure out what you wanna do.
No.
The 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock discharge on a Friday afternoon, I don't like admissions on a weekend anywhere. And I'll say something negative, and I only say it because I'd like something to change. Each individual healthcare system, assisted living, hospital, nursing home, rehab center, hospital rehab, they're all silos or compartments, and they don't talk to each other. And then they all have their own dysfunction, and so you're in one system and then you jump over to the next system. You just got where you kind of understood the language, and then you're in a brand new environment. And then you got to know the financial systems. Well, if you're being bombarded, but you have time and you have an advocate that you can call and say, this is what they said. Is that right? Can they
Right.
do that?
Yeah.
And we can be your professional courage, if you will, to
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
those conversations that will, put you more in the driver's seat instead of being in that reactionary state.
And that's kind of how most of us are. Is I'd like to have somebody I can call and say, okay, even if I just did Amy, they just said this, is that right? And then if you say, yes, that's right, I'd say, okay, fine, I'm good with that, right? And, and look, I've been in real estate my whole life, so I understand. And I think that people should trust me for my knowledge. If someone says this should be happening, this should happen, I can say, no, 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 we're not going to do it that way, or we don't have to, or we should, or we shouldn't. And so I respect that. And I respect that in professionals, we hire attorneys for those reasons. And actually, we hire doctors for those reasons. But if you're in the hospital and one person gives you a medication, you don't know whether that's a good thing or not, or if they even look to see what you're already taking, right? And everybody has their own interests, right? They have their own roles in the hospital, but they have their own responsibility. My job is to discharge this person because we need the bed, right?
Right.
Something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I guess I guess the most important thing to me is, when you say the lawyer, think about doing your taxes on your own. Think about suing someone on your own.
Yeah,
That's how I feel when someone says, "Oh yeah, I've taken care of my mother," and they're not getting any help. That's how I feel. Like, oh my gosh, they have no idea. I had a son bragging to me about being with his mother in the hospital 9 times last year. And I said, "Well, 8 times too many." Like,
yeah,
that's not something I'd be bragging about. Like,
right,
what information could you have had to have her who wants to be in an ambulance every other week? Like, it you get taken to the hospital, but the hospital's like, "You're here, so you must want us to fix you. So we're gonna do surgery, we're gonna do tests, we're gonna." Well, if that's not what you want, why are you going?
right. Even as simple as getting in the ambulance and letting them tell you where they're going to take you, right?
Yeah. And, I don't know if this is nationwide, but it probably is. An ambulance has a contract with a county, and they're required to take you to the nearest receiving facility.
Right. Yeah.
People don't know that. But they also don't know if you land at that hospital and you wanna be one acro get transferred.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
They don't know that.
Yeah, right. Right. My dad would get in the ambulance. I want to go to Hoag. Oh, we're not going to Hoag today. Well, no, I want to go to Hoag. Well, that's not an option. And then he gets there, and then of course they call me, and then I didn't know Amy at the time, so it became my problem. Let's talk about where people should live. You must have so many decisions to help families with. as far as assisted living? If it's a memory care that's needed, should they live at home? How do you even begin to tackle that discussion with a family?
So hopefully you start early. And a lot of times you don't. You're in the middle of a crisis. So I don't fault anybody for not doing this early. The biggest thing that needs to be known is money. What's afforded? What can you afford? The other thing is some emotional discernment over your own risk tolerance. And by that I mean
Yes, talk about
I
that.
I have a high risk tolerance. And I had a lady, at home with a memory impairment, and she never wandered at night. Never. So she had help during the day, but at night she was on her own. Well, the power of attorney was a little nervous Nelly. And I said, I'm not nervous. We can put care in there, but she's going to be out of money and land in the nursing home. But I can bet you we have alarms on the door, cameras. She's not going to leave that house. And she didn't for 4 years. So
Okay.
what's your risk tolerance? What can you afford? And then this is a hard one, but some people, have a hard and fast, don't ever put me in a facility. Don't ever, ever do that. Well, I've seen people, particularly those with memory impairment, they move into a community and they thrive
Yeah.
because their memory impairment is not, you're not pressured to know things that you don't know. It's your weird behavior, stealing somebody's socks or somebody's belt or somebody's dentures. That's normal. Like no one's pitching a fit over what you're doing, like
Right. Yeah.
it. And so the person with a memory impairment can't say, but they're relieved because they don't have that pressure anymore.
Interesting.
And
Think they know that?
I think emotionally they do. I absolutely do. And if you think about it, and I'll use my dad, calling me 20 times to help him with his remote. Okay. That's a common one, and I get laughs everywhere because that somehow that remote with older people, but particularly with a memory impairment, drives people crazy. Well, if you're in a memory unit or memory care, nobody's gonna do anything about a remote. One, you won't be watching TV because you're gonna be involved in something else. But you can tell your story over and over and over, and people aren't gonna give you that exasperated look. Like,
Right.
can
Yep.
you imagine if you're telling a story, it's the first time, you think it's the first time, and then you get a look from someone and you're, like, hurt. Like, your feelings are hurt. Well,
Sure.
if there's an aide in the house and they've been trained in memory, they're gonna act like every single time they hear that story, it's the first time.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And the other thing is you've got introverted personalities and extroverted personalities. You've got people, and people that really get their energy from being on their own, alone. And so you have to have a lot of emotional awareness to say, Dad can't afford home care at home. We're going to move him into a community. But tell the staff, don't bug him to go out to meals every day. Like, don't bug him to go out because he's not going to do all those activities. He wants to be on his own. So, kind of help the staff learn your family member so that they're not trying to get them to be somebody that they're not. Well, he sits in his room all day. Well, he did that. He worked and went home and sat on his own all day.
Right. So it's about managing expectations also.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
If that's his normal, then it's not going to change just because he goes into assisted living. Right. If he's in a community, let's say, for example, he's in a 55 plus community where they've got activities at the clubhouse, but he never goes there. Probably
Right.
in the assisted living, he's not going to go there every minute just because there's 13 activities that afternoon.
That's
Right.
right.
Right. At least maybe
And
he'll work into it, but
yeah, and my dad used to say, I am never playing bingo. Don't put me in one of those places. And right. I mean, there's some common scenarios out there. Well, when his mind went, he was playing bingo with 6 cards, having the time of his life.
sure.
So
Yeah.
you might have one thought, but you gotta be open to something might change.
Right. Amy, help me with a question that so many, I know so many of our viewers and listeners have, is how do you make the decision between home care and assisted living? Because if you have home care, you can have somebody come 3, 4, 5 mornings a month or a week at 3, 4 hours a day. But then, and you mentioned this earlier, but then maybe they fall at night. All right. And you can put, but that's not free. There's a cost to that. Or you can put them in assisted living at maybe about the same cost. How do families decide really what's the best?
So there's a couple different strategies. The common rule of thumb is when the person needs 10 to 12 hours a day at home, that's about what assisted living costs.
That's the comparison, right?
Right. So if you're
Okay.
deciding at what point do we make the move, it's financially driven. If your budget is X amount of dollars per month, you do it at home as long as you can afford it. When you get to that 10 to 12 hour, then you make the change because you can't
Okay.
increase it.
Okay.
And the other factor is there are some people that you can go 4 hour and there's a 4 hour minimum. So you got to pay 4 hours and whatever the going rate is in the state that you live in.
That's right.
Um, if you can give them 4 hours, maybe it's 10 to 2, maybe it's 9 to 1, maybe it's 1 to 5, and they're fine the rest of the time, that's great. But if they need 4 in the morning and 4 at night, then you have the issue of staff because people that are working part-time are looking for that full-time job. So you have high
There.
turnover with a
Yep.
part-time worker. That's just normal. You're not going to have, Sally coming over 3 times a week at 4 hours a day and keep Sally most of the time. So that's another kind of practical consideration is when do they need that help? And if they're at risk at night and you do the 10 hours at night and they're fine during the day, then you're going to look for evening care.
Okay.
Typically, assisted living is more affordable when you need 24 within a 24-hour period of time, you need someone checking in on you, and it could be the different time during the day.
But assisted living isn't meant to be a place where they're going to go and be given medical care either, right? The standard, some of them are, but most of them are not, right? It's not a place where if you have, is it not true that if they need medical care or medication, that's an extra charge or you have to bring somebody else in to do some of those things for them?
You might not know how smart that question is, but that's a really smart question. And that
I
is
didn't know. So thank you very much.
I feel very brilliant right now.
Yes, yes. Well, I'll feel brilliant when I know the answer.
So so if your person has a lot of medical diagnoses, you wanna make sure that there's a nurse on staff in assisted living,
Okay.
because assisted living with no nurse on staff and medically complex, and by medically complex, I would say 3 chronic diagnoses or more, or a chronic diagnosis that requires a lot of attention, like diabetes, um, you're gonna wanna make sure and the biggest flaw in assisted living right now is they're selling medical care, but they're providing a social model. So the expectation is not met. Families move them in because they think they're gonna get that medical care. Well, a nurse might have 40 people, and the person that's giving the medications is a med tech, and they might have 6 hours of training.
Right.
So and then I'll also add to that assisted living or board and care, like, I don't know what the language might be different in every but assisted living means that you need assistance with getting a bath and getting dressed most of the time. If you need skilled nursing care or nursing home care, you need total help getting bathed and dressed. Using an example of bathing, you need to be wheeled into the bathroom, you need to sit down in the chair, someone's gotta, you know, get you all wet, soap you down, wash your hair, and do everything. That's skilled nursing. And you
Right.
cannot even believe my dad's face the first time he got bathed by somebody.
Oh,
Oh
I'm
my
sure.
god.
Oh my
He was
gosh.
terrified. He called, he was terrified. "You'll never believe what happened to me. This woman came in and like, oh my god, dragged me into," he was very dramatic,
Sure.
"dragged me into the bathroom." But If you're in assisted living or just assisted, you're gonna be escorted to the bathroom, and maybe they help you sit down. Maybe you use the bar of soap for the top part of your body. Maybe you get help with your hair, like, that's
Sure.
assisted care.
The non so intimate part of it, right?
Non so intimate, yeah,
Tell
yeah.
me, tell me what it is about being a care manager that gives you so much gratification, because I know it does.
Um, watching people's anxiety go down and watching them cry with relief that they're not alone. It's a very isolating experience being a caregiver. It's very isolating, and if you are in a world where no one else is taking care of an older person, they don't really understand. It's kinda like talking about the birth of your child to somebody who's never had a baby, like, they don't get it. Like, I don't have any empathy, I don't have children. So, watching that happen and then helping people get, connections, real emotional connections with their person because they're not chronically running through their head everything they have to do. I gotta get the medication, I gotta pick up the medicine, I gotta do their laundry, I gotta label their laundry, I gotta get them the hot like, all that work can be divided up, so when they go over and they've had a meaningful conversation or they played bingo with their dad, which I did, like, oh my god, watching that meaningful conversations, and the first time a child says to me, "I slept through the night. I slept through the night." Or I gave a talk at a university, and I hope I don't cry when I relay this, but I gave a talk at a university. When I was done, this woman literally ran up to me crying that I'd helped her with her parents however many years ago, and she never forgot
Oh,
it.
oh my.
And I started crying because that's why I do what I do. I'm touched by an older person just because they're vulnerable and
Yeah.
real, and what you see is what you get. But if it's not your mother, it's very different. So, it's that part is very gratifying to me, and then seeing the older person, and I had this said to me, can you get my kids off my back? They're bugging
Oh,
me. They're trying to control me.
joy.
They wanna make all my decisions." You know, I had a woman pay me to help her daughter stop bugging her.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
funny.
I had to explain with the daughter, like, how much stress she was causing. She just didn't know it. And
No.
I sent her to a therapist.
Oh,
Like,
oh,
talk over some of these because she was acting trying to do as much as she could because she felt guilty.
oh.
So, helping people get clear on emotional motivations and, letting their own emotional issues get supported so that they're not bringing all that into helping their parents in this new stage of life.
Well, I now spend a fair amount of time out visiting assisted living communities and memory care communities, and then I go home and tell my mom about it, just subtly thinking that someday she might say, "Oh, could I go with you and look at them?" Right? Which has not yet happened, but she does call my sister and say, "Okay, Valerie says I'm moving to this one." She didn't even tell me. She didn't even take me there. She's moving me there just because I came back and said, "Oh, I went to this really pretty assisted living community today. Mom, you might like it. You should go look at it with me." So she thinks, just as you're saying, right? They think you've already made the decision for them.
Yeah, because she's afraid.
Very afraid.
She's very afraid, and it's a very you know, it is a scary proposition. What's gonna happen to me?
Yeah.
I'm at the end, and, 105, 90. They don't know when the end is gonna be, so they are at the end.
No, no. And we don't know either. So it's hard for us to make the decision. My mom's doctor says it's not my decision to make. And God will decide when that time is. In the meantime, I should just keep doing my job. So that's the story at our house. I want to just take a few minutes and talk about memory and dementia because that's such an important topic to families right now. What makes dementia or memory care really challenging?
The uncertainty. One day they're clear as a bell, the next day they're not. The repetition over and over and over, they're asking the same thing. They said I didn't come and
Yeah,
see them and I just left. The
yeah,
the the low grade anxiety that they might put something on the stove and forget to turn it
right.
off,
Yeah,
safety issues, and then not really knowing the stages of dementia, mild, moderate, severe, early, middle, late. There's lots of other different stages, but and then how do you communicate in a way that doesn't make the conversation worse? And it's
yes. So talk about that. You've given some examples in your book, and they're brilliant, I think. So let's talk about that.
well, let's just say that um, you've got an accountant or an engineer who values accuracy. Those are the worst. Those are the worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The artists have
Even
an
even
easier
in
time.
memory care even in memory care, they're the worst? Do they know?
Not this person, the person caring for them.
Oh, yes, okay.
You want an account to be accurate, but if you wanna be accurate and you're talking to somebody with memory impairment, yeah, you gotta give that up because 'cause they're gonna
Oh,
say,
I
"You
see, sure.
didn't visit me," and you
Okay.
wanna say, "I was just there." Well, that's gonna escalate them.
So how do you handle that?
You change the subject, you redirect, you try to start another conversation, or you say something very affirming, like how much you care for them, and "I just had this memory of you the other day, and can I share it with you?" And, kind of bring them back to a positive experience, and they might bring it up again, and this is what makes it so tiring. "How come you don't visit me right how come you're not here? I never see you anymore." And you continue to do that same strategy or change the subject or ignore or you redirect or focus on painting a picture or play a game of cards or take them on a walk or and you continue to use these non confrontational techniques because when a person has a memory impairment, what I've noticed is when they get agitated, they have a harder time recovering,
Oh,
like settling back down. And so if you repeatedly correct them and they continue to escalate, they have a harder time coming down. So the goal would be keep them calm and feeling because think about it. Think about you wake up in the morning and you don't know where you are, but it's been your home for 50 years. How
yeah,
stressed your nervous system would be. How
yeah,
did I get there? Where am I? Who am I? Like,
yeah.
I had a son walk in to see his mother, and the mother thought it was her husband.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And he knew enough to play along,
oh,
and then he called me crying. Like so and the other suggestion I would, buy the book, The 36-Hour Day, probably
yes,
the first book that was ever written.
yeah,
Meet a couple people. You don't have to meet an army, but meet a couple people that are taking care of somebody with a memory impairment so that you have a comrade. You've got somebody you can call and go, "Well, let me tell you what" I did that with my dad. I call my buddy Lori. I'd say,
uh,
"You will never believe what my dad said today." It's just shocking. She could hear me on a deeper level than somebody who had never taken care of their parent. And when I told her what my dad did, it was kind of, like, shocking. Um, and my other friends would have been, "Oh my god, are you gonna put him in the hospital? Oh," and my other girlfriend right, like, like
I'm
an
not gonna
alarm.
do that. I'm just telling you
Yeah,
what he said, right? Has nothing
right.
to do with anything, right? Not even
Yeah,
relevant. I'm just
yeah.
venting, right?
Mm. And then you have the moving target of grief. Like, they're there, you love them, they remember you, and then they don't.
Oh,
And then you have it's ambiguous loss, it's a really weird grief because you leave and you're sad, they're physically there, they don't remember you, but they haven't died.
right.
And then a complicated emotion of thinking, "I wish they would die."
I
Like,
know. So
it
terrible.
it's a very real thing, and people need to say it, not that they're gonna go out and, euthanize their dad, but you need to say those things because it is stressful. And you're in deep grief, but they're not gone yet.
Yes. Yes, you are. All of those things. Amy, give us a story. What is your best story when you think of what you've done over the years and all of the people you've helped successfully and who love you for what you've done for them? What's one or two stories that really comes to mind?
Well, I had one where I had 2 sons who said, "We'll take you to the house, but mom's not gonna let you help her. She's just not gonna let you help her." So, I walked in the
My mom.
house.
That's
Oh,
my
yeah.
mom.
And this woman had a memory impairment, and she's very entitled, and she had a reason to be. She had a lot of money. And I walked in and she said, "What the hell are you doing here? Get out of my house." Okay. So I left. I went around the back door. I came in the back door, walked in again, 'cause you never know, memory impairment. Okay.
Yeah. Man.
And she looked at me, she said, "Thank God you're here. That other woman was a bitch."
Oh my gosh.
And she let me in.
Oh my gosh.
Right, right. And the sons had been all tensed up, and they walked out the front porch and just, like, everything in them let go, and the mother and I bonded, and we were able to care for her, I wanna say for 8 years in her home.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So people think, "Oh, you'll never get in the house," which most of the time people say you'll never get in. Well, that's what we do for it's like telling the plumber, "My toilet's broken, you'll never be able to fix it." Like,
Sure. Yeah.
no,
Sure.
no. And
So
the other one was a woman in a skilled nursing facility was dying, and the staff hadn't told the daughter that she was dying.
oh,
And I called the daughter and I said, "Can you meet me this afternoon at your mom's room?" And I talked to her about where her mother was, and she was a big lawyer, and the daughter had, busy schedule, and I said, "I don't know how important this will be for you, but if your mother dies and you're working, if you're gonna be okay with that, keep working. But if you're not, I would want you to be here." And she canceled her appointments. She sat with her mother, and she was with her when she died.
uh,
And, I have a lot of them. When you say, "Just tell me a couple stories," I got a boatload.
oh, I'm sure you do.
It's powerful. It's powerful to be able to professionally see something, help a family member see it also. And then the daughter asked me later, "Why didn't the nursing home tell me?" That's not their training.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not. Amy, thank you. We need to have you come back again. I hope that you please will do that. This conversation has been heartfelt and deeply important to so many of us that are going through this every day and facing it or think we're about to. Your insights have helped us lift the fog that so many families live in when they enter the fragile years or are already in them. You reminded us the importance of preparation and that love can be shown in practical ways, and that aging, even when it's hard, can still be full of meaning and connection. Thank you so very much. Until the next time, we ask our listeners to be sure to stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember you are never too old. It's never too late to live a life that is always ageless. Thank you, Amy Cameron O'Rourke.
Thank you, Valerie.